there is one planet. It has no boundaries when it comes to the water we share and the air that we breathe and the food that we need. And we need to act as global citizens to solve this together.
Welcome back, everybody. Rich Brubaker, founder of Collective Responsibility, here today with another episode of the Sustainable Ambassador Podcast. And in this episode, I'm extremely excited to be joined by the CEO of Circular Economy, Ivonne Bojoh. Circular Economy is a global impact organization that seeks to empower industries, cities, nations with practical and scalable solutions to put the circular economy in action. The circular economy, it's a very big framework. It's something that Ellen MacArthur kind of coined early on, but if we're talking about this as at the operational level, there's so many different aspects, and through our conversation, we're going to be talking a little about the work that she's doing, how they define circular economies, and then also how she got on her own path into this space, coming from a whole different career into this space. So, Ivonne, thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to share our insights and our work with your audience.
So as a starting point, maybe introduce yourself and a little bit of the work of the circular economy.
Sure. I am born and raised in the Netherlands, but also spent a lot of my childhood years in Indonesia, where my dad was from. Currently working at Circular Economy as CEO since last December. And with that, I think a good introduction about Circular Economy is that it's a group of very passionate individuals championing circular solutions to ensure that financial institutions, industry leaders, policymakers, academia, fellow NGOs have the insights and have the skills themselves to really push for this transition towards a circular future. We've defined three primary objectives. First being that we want everyone who's looking to transition to have a baseline analysis of where they are today and what they should be focusing on, what gives them the biggest leap forward in their transition. The second objective is for the financials to flow towards the projects, initiatives, and investments needed to transition to the circular state. And the third being identifying which skills are needed and how do we engage people to also start developing those skills.
Okay, so the next big question is, how do you guys define circular economy, and what are the major factors or systemic issues that you're most focused on?
A truly circular economy is a system where we design out waste and we ensure that we extend life cycles of products, that we look at designing out the waste from the beginning, really at your product design, and then start looking at different ways of sourcing.
From there, what are some common barriers that you see impeding progress at closing these loops?
That's an easy question and it's hard to answer. First off, it's not knowing. Once you know what you're causing as a consumer, it'll make you more conscious about the choices you make. Second is designing products that need to be replaced within a certain amount of time, surely because you are after maximizing profit. So you're designing it on purpose, designing it in a way that it needs to be replaced. Third obstacle is policies. Some policies are currently not prepared to support the right initiatives and, for lack of a better word, punish the ones that are not doing the right thing. And last but not least is also not knowing how to gauge a project or an investment on its impact makes it really hard for financials to be unlocked, to flow in that direction. And that has to do with indicators, and that has to do with the business KPIs, and that has to do with awareness. It all trickles down. But I think those are like the primary objectives that we see in this transition, and that is just not going fast enough because those just have not been resolved.
And I would agree on all points. I kind of separate the first one as maybe behavior and the other three as systems. When you're looking at how to change these dynamics or to move the needle a little bit in these spaces, is it better to focus on the behavior of consumers and get them to be aware and then push back on brands or demand more from regulators? Or is it better to arm the regulators and the brands with the awareness of how to change their systems? Therefore, consumers can do whatever they want, but the externality doesn't become the impact that we're focused on.
There's this discussion between, is it the consumer's responsibility to make better choices, or is it the producer's responsibility to make better products? You and me, we could make different choices when we go to a supermarket or to any store, but there are millions, hundreds of millions of people that cannot make those choices. So making it the consumer's responsibility, I think, is too broad and too generic of a statement. I do think that behavior, like consumer behavior, can be changed. I think we can be made more aware. We as consumers often don't realize enough how much power we have, the power of choice when we have the choice, and to exercise that choice. We've seen enough, companies in our lifetime that have gone bankrupt for different reasons, but it's also because they're losing their clientele. So I think for those who have a choice, to make the right choice and not go, well, if it wasn't for me, someone else would buy it. If it wasn't for me, someone else would use it. That's too easy. Now, the other side, the producers, with the extended producer responsibility, with CSRD, with ESG, all those different policies coming into play, I think there is a big push on companies out there to become more responsible.
It's very difficult to talk about consumers at a single level, right? So if we're talking like, say, plastic water bottles, I was in with one of the presidents of one of the larger groups, and I'm like, look, I totally get that in parts of the world like Southeast Asia, some parts of Africa, parts of India, like there is no access to clean water. You are the only source. How can anyone really blame you when you're delivering health and life through water? Like, I get that. But in London and San Francisco and New York and Flint, Michigan, is there a different way? Like, is there a new business model for you to get involved with where you get away from the plastic water bottle, you get into municipal water? And I won't say that I got a great audience on that point, but I think that was where it's like you're starting to see some shift in that over time, where some of them are starting to look at that.
If they would see their product design holistically through the life cycle of the product, then you could reconsider how you would perhaps then collect those bottles again at the end of its life cycle and then repurpose it. Now, doing that is a lot more expensive than just sourcing virgin material, right? So right now, recycling bottles is not at a stage economically that it is viable for a lot of these companies. At the same time, now that the consumer is asking for recycled products, or at least partially recycled products, now there is, a market for recycled plastics. So this is where, of course, new companies, new initiatives come in. So I think we've gone through all these phases.
To kind of segue into one of the things that you've put out recently, the Circularity Gap Report. I think, that came out a few months ago. You had a big launch around that. And there's a few things I took away from that. And one of them was that you shared that the secondary materials consumed really went down from, I think you said 9.19 in 2018 to 7.5 in 2023. And I have a few questions around like this gap, and like the one that you highlighted there is like, first up, how do you even measure this? And what do you consider to be the major contributing factors to that decline? Was that like a COVID problem, or was that a real kind of drawback in process and systems and engagement over those 5 years? Because that includes the time when the plastic straw in a turtle's nose and the Q-tip and the seahorse's tail was there. So I thought we were making progress, but you found the opposite. So I'm curious, like, how did you measure that, and what do you think is behind it?
So this is our 7th edition of the Circularity Gap Report, which measures the circularity of the global economy, an X-ray of the economy in the sense of what materials go in and what materials come out at the other end and what is repurposed. Now, in the time that we've done the Circularity Gap Reports, the amount of material extracted in those years is almost the equivalent of the 100 years prior. So let that sink in. So we have gone down to 7.2%, even though the conversation around circularity has tripled. So we see the adoption in policies, we see the ask for circular solutions, we see circular products and business models. So that has all increased. And at the same time, the material use is going up. So I think what we're seeing there is that the circular solutions that are out there have not been adopted widely enough to even see that trend go down while the population continues to grow. there's a tipping point right now that we really have to reduce our consumption, our production, and distribute it more evenly. And this is also where circular economy really believes that the transition needs to be done in a socially just manner. And to give you an example, there was a conversation with different clothing brands a couple of years back where the production was in Southeast Asia. Being European brands, making sustainable choices in your production would also mean that you could produce in Portugal. Now, if brands were to do that, if brands were to produce closer to home, what do we do with the thousands of people and the thousands of families that have been working in these garment factories for decades? What do they do once these companies leave?
Sometimes we are hampered by we're trying to achieve perfection. And in a sense, like if we're solving for the waste problem, we then think about the justice problem. We then think about the other implications of solving the waste problem, even though it's our job to solve the waste problem. So I'm curious, does that inhibit change, or is that just another consideration? Like, look, we're going to make 80%, or about 20% later, make 80% on that 20%. Like,
the reason why we believe in this data-centered approach is to make sure that instead of trying to do everything at the same time with the same amount of resources equally divvied up, like we believe that looking at your economy and then deciding which sectors or which solutions are most relevant for you, to make sure that when you do put your effort behind it, it also creates the biggest impact. When we're looking at minimizing waste, we also have to take into account that there's this huge informal sector looking at like waste pickers. It's the informal sector, and that needs to be looked at. So then there's the social angle. And then there is the actual exporting of waste and the economic drivers behind that, which need to be taken into account. So even just looking at waste, there is this end-to-end global value chain that you have to consider. There is one planet. It has no boundaries when it comes to the water we share and the air that we breathe and the food that we need. It is global, and we need to act as global citizens to solve this together, which is, I understand that might be like utopia. But I do really believe in, if we look at our hearts and we talk, and or not even talk, but if we consider our children, our grandchildren and their children, and we think about that, then there is no other way.
In that vein, what do you think it takes to effectively catalyze change? Is it a crisis? Is it a change of mindset? Is it a change in policy? Is it a breakthrough technology? What's going to catalyze the change?
When something hurts, I think that's when you respond. And does it take a crisis? Does it take like disasters? I think they're all around. We've had COVID, we have forest fires, we have drought, we have so many disasters locally in so many places on Earth, and still we're not really waking up. I think we do see more conversations around the topic. We do see more people being engaged. I think we need to accept that it is a gradual process, and that a shift like this, which is a truly systemic shift, will take time, and that those who are working at it, working towards it, keep your head down and believe that it will change, but it will take time. And we need to continue to support each other, and I think find the energy to keep going by looking at the things that are going in the right direction, because there are things that are happening, and we just need to keep celebrating those successes, celebrating those changes.
What are the breakthroughs that you're seeing coming to the surface, and who are the stakeholders supporting that ecosystem or that growth or that potential economy or that innovation? Like,
if we look at some of the policies that have been implemented in the EU specifically, I think that's the right direction. That's policy. Now, if I look at money, there are the multilateral development banks. The pledge that they have made, that they have also confirmed again at WCF earlier this year, that is a step in the right direction, where it's made important, it's made instrumental to ensure that the finances are available to this transition. If we look at the adoption of circular economy as a principle, I think what I find very interesting is that there's an increase in interest in it because people do see it as a means to an end. They do see that adopting circular solutions in their product development, it really does change the way that we behave and the way that we approach ownership. One of the things that we also increasingly see is stewardship rather than ownership, and being rewarded for that. So those are different concepts that you do see around more and more that also inspire others. We have a circular economy has a publicly available knowledge hub, which is a collection of different circular case studies contributed by anyone in the world. It's like the Wikipedia of circular economy case studies of remarkable initiatives, and we're collecting them to make sure we have like a centralized database, if you will, with these case studies, so people can be inspired by others and share and learn from each other. And I think that's also where we see a lot of positive movement across all different sectors, different industries, different regions.
So which innovations do you think are energizing right now? Like, are there certain things that you're looking at that have real potential for scale?
Designing out waste from any supply chain. I think that is where the product designers can be inspired by the film Going Circular and how Arthur Huang looks at products, how to design them that they will either last forever, or when they do reach end of life, it's a starting point for something new. And those are the things that I think a lot of people can learn from and take inspiration from.
I want to, we have about 10 minutes left. I want to transition into your own career and your own career path. Because I think, as much as we talk about the challenges and some of the work that you're doing, I'd love to know how you got into this work. Because for 20 years, you really were an entrepreneur and innovator space person, less so a sustainability directly person. And I'm curious, what was behind your shift? Why leave the entrepreneurship innovation space? And how does that compare to the work that you're doing now, in a sense? What was behind this shift, and how did 20 years of working with entrepreneurs kind of prepare you for the work you're doing now?
So the last startup that I was at was in Singapore, and together with 3 co-founders, we set up a fintech platform. While building out the platform, traveling around Asia to our different offices, I was confronted with the vast change that Southeast Asia had experienced between my childhood and my adulthood. And in 2019, my husband and I took a weekend away to really do a review of our last 10 years of life and looking at the next 10 years of our life and what energizes you and what doesn't, and what do you want to do. And it was really apparent when we were doing all those questions for me that I wanted to do something to address global societal and environmental issues. And that was probably triggered by everything that I'd seen in the years that we were living in Singapore. And also because I felt that what I was doing was contributing to the problem. So stepping down, I still had no idea. So, after over 20 years of startup life, I thought about, what do I do? What can I do? With the work that I've done, how could I apply that? And it was through conversations in 2020 with I started to understand the different initiatives towards the SDG goals. And then one of the conversations I had was with Martin Lopez Cardoso, my predecessor, the former CEO of Circular Economy, and he explained the concept of circular economy. And in that conversation, I realized that, I think that's when the shells fell off my eyes. I was like, now I get it. And I think from that point, I was so intrigued and inspired by that concept that was an eye opener. So coming into circular economy, working on the digital strategy, that was the starting point of my career within Circle, with the background of scaling organizations, building operations. I took on the operational responsibility as well. And then when Martin transitioned out and joined Regeneration VC, I then took on the CEO role in last December.
What's the balance that you found in your job as a role of passion? And then how do you leverage that to kind of keep going through these challenging events, news bites, trends that you're seeing?
To balance passion where you don't tear things up, because you can go too fast, you can want to change too much. You have to have compassion, which means that not everyone might be on the same page as you. Some people have other priorities. Some people might want to work differently. So making sure that you continue to be compassionate, I think, is a way to balance your own passion, because I don't think people should try to temper their passion, because passion to me is almost like a life source. It's almost like your ikigai, it's your chi. You don't want to water down your passion, but to realize that everyone around you might not be where you are and be compassionate about it. I think that's where, to me, the balance is found.
In that vein, if you're speaking to another mid-career professional who is passionate about something that they see wrong in the world and wants to get what I call on mission, what are a few pieces of advice you'd give them as they seek to find their own medium, their own platform to act on that change?
First of all, if you do not feel that the place that you're working in today gives you the job satisfaction when you're seeking to make a difference in the world, then find another job as soon as possible. And trust that when you find the job that's right for you, that you will be fine. If you are looking to find what you want to do, like you want to contribute, you just don't know where to start, find a coach. There's so much you can do. And I'm pretty sure with your talent, you can contribute anywhere. We just need to find what it is that you're passionate about, whether it's kids, whether it's nature, whether it's circular economy specifically, or there's so many different subjects that you could contribute to. So find someone that can help you find that particular subject that is right for you.